What's up, people of Earth? How are you? Welcome to the podcast club. Very exciting guest this week, Bryan Barletta of Sounds Profitable. Welcome to the show, Bryan. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, man. We're super stoked that you're here. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We are a big fan of your newsletters and all the stuff that you're writing about, and I just think it's brilliant what you're doing. I think it's super awesome. So thanks for coming on the show, man. Definitely interested to dive into the newsletter that came out today about the dynamic ad insertion, or DAI, right? Is that the acronym, right? We got to get hip. So, so give us a little bit of background about like your origin story. Like, how did you go from wherever you were to writing Sounds Profitable? What did that look like?
So originally I was a turtle, and then I fell into radioactive waste.
I knew it.
Make it sound so cool. So I fell into ad tech. Almost 12 years ago, in like the mobile application space. I was a big app reviewer nerd for like a very small publication, and then I moved from a small town in Massachusetts to New York. Got to work for a lot of really cool companies in the mobile app advertising space. Because none of the companies building the apps wanted to hire somebody with no experience and a lot of opinions, but the people selling ads and selling the ad technology did. So I did that for a while, and then one of the companies I was at, AdTheorent, actually had an attribution company built into it, and they split it off. They called it Barometric. And then Barometric had a great client in WNYC and in Progressive that both basically said, hey, this attribution technology works really great. How's it work in podcasting? And we were like, it absolutely can work in podcasting. And then we went and figured it out. And then Barometric became a podcast attribution company. We sold to Claritas. And then I went over to Megaphone. I was there for a little under a year, leading their data and monetization teams on the product side. And it was very fun. But, we kind of parted ways in August because I wanted to do something a little bit different. And as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I started writing about the podcast ad tech industry, because I think that it is something that a lot of people take advantage of, how easy it is to misunderstand. And I'm a sales engineer and product manager by trade. So my job is to take these complex things and make them accessible to everybody. So I started writing it. And it just took off. Pod News, James Cridlin from Pod News, brought me on board to start the Pod News network. And so now I'm part of that family. And we're about 2,000 subscribers in just 4 months with a weekly newsletter, and it's been really fun. And I guess I get to say like the quiet things out loud. I get to talk about the things that people like to keep shrouded, so that they can have like their corner of the industry all to themselves. But the reality is I want everybody to use this stuff, because that's how we all grow without having to rely solely on other companies coming in to grow it for us.
I love that. I think it is a lot of complex information, and it can be overwhelming to podcasters, especially, the average podcaster, right? Like, that's not like an audio engineer, doesn't understand ad tech. I mean, most podcasters don't even know about like Facebook ads. And I'm like, yeah man, you gotta there's no, you're not going to just get seen. That's not how it's not how that works anymore,
Nope.
So many podcasters think they can just start. I'm going to start a podcast and make all this money, And
that kills me, because in the same way, I think that, if I said to you, I'm going to start a radio station and make all this money, or I'm going to start a TV station, or I'm going to start the next streaming app or YouTube channel, or I'm going to be an Instagram influencer and make all this money. Yeah. The people maybe 10 years ago, if you would have started with it and just stuck with it, even if you weren't great, maybe that you could have just put the time in to do it. But now it's going to be creative. Now it's going to compete for people's attention and against other things. And so I think that it's super okay to just start a podcast because you want to start a podcast. But if you want to start it to quit your job, I think there's some things you have to take seriously. And then there's also a little dose of reality. I'm terrible at video games, but I always wanted to be a professional video game player. And I'll tell you, that's never going to happen. And I'm never going to convince my wife to let me do that. So We just, you figure out what's fun, what you can make money on, and how to collaborate. And I really do think that as long as your content's good and you work with the right people, and you really want to learn all these things, I think there's plenty of room for people to sit in that mid or even upper tier of podcasting still.
Oh, I think so too. Because I mean, it's almost like a little bit crowded at the very, very top. With the like it's going to be tough to ever beat Joe Rogan on iTunes or whatever, right? But there's still so much room. I was reading this article with this like old curmudgeon-y guy. Like we were joking about him last week. He's like sounds like a sound guy from the '80s. He's just angry all the time. But he was just saying like, oh, podcasting is going downhill. I mean, there's only so many hours in a day to listen. And I'm like, yeah, but like one podcast could be 30 minutes. They got to wait a week for the next one. Like there's plenty of hours in the day. Like I don't really see it going anywhere, right? So. I feel like there's plenty of room for people to still establish themselves, create a brand of, create a community, as much as I hate people overusing those particular words. But I mean, there's still plenty of room in that space, especially when you consider Pod Fade and Pod Flash, right? Like how many of those, names are actually active?
Yeah, I think so. Joe Rogan's like a great example. And I always like to point this out, right? You can still be a Joe Rogan to most of the countries out there. Right? Like if you want to be a Joe Rogan or a Tim Ferriss in Turkey, there's probably still room. In Southeast Asia and in these different territories, there's definitely still space for it. There's a guy I met who 2 years ago decided he wanted to be like the Tim Ferriss in France. And now he basically is. And that's really neat. Or you can take and dissect up a Joe Rogan episode into all these little different things and figure out which specific niche like really appeals to you. And then you do something drilled down there. And so maybe you aren't the number one podcast overall, but maybe you are in some obscure thing that's really relevant to you, right? There are people out there that look into things specific to their field, or like, heck, like I said, I'm a huge nerd. There's a new tabletop role-playing game out there called Cortex Prime, and I would love to listen to a podcast where someone actually explains it to me, and there isn't one there yet, and I guarantee I'm not the only one. So it's really about just like figuring out exactly what you want to talk about. I think like American-based or US-based generalists, I think that's pretty bad. Like nobody wants to hear two dudes talking just to talk, especially in English. But I think that the further away you get from that, and especially the further away you get from just the US, there's a lot of room.
For sure. Have you guys seen the company that like now translates your podcast into like a multitude of languages so you can make it available like on several continents? I don't know
really
which one it
cool.
was. I know, right? Like that's a game changer. Like watch out Google Translate. Like those guys are coming, man.
Yeah, I wonder. I'd love to listen to a few examples of that, because I cannot imagine that something really can take the enthusiasm of someone's voice. Like I love Descript, for example, and I play around with the overdub feature. But unless I record a specific voice that's like Bryan excited and Bryan, mellow, everything sounds kind of even keel. So it's kind of hard to show that enthusiasm in these automated tools, or then you're entrusting someone else to read it in a different language and hope that they're gonna take the inflection where you have it.
Dude, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that with Descript. Yeah, it's just going to put your word in. So you might really want to be like, you motherfucker, but it's like, you mother. Yeah, I don't think it would work out. It just wouldn't drive it home the same way.
Yeah, I have a friend who does a podcast called T's and Z's, and it's basically he reads terms and services to help people fall asleep. And so he started doing it in Descript with like a really... a very gentle voice like this and all that. And I said, and he's like, well, I want to do like a Patreon, and like, what would the bonus content be? And I was like, do it like T's, T-E-A-S-E, and make it more erotic. And so record a new Descript voice with like a real different inflection to it. So hopefully he takes me up on that. But
that's,
yeah.
Oh, God bless podcasting. You know what I'm saying? Like anything is possible, man. You 100%. Can read terms and conditions.
There are a lot of people falling asleep to that guy's podcast, and it's
you don't even have to write them. You just find a box from Amazon in your house. I guarantee there's some T's and C's somewhere in that.
Yep,
that is awesome. Some
it's
of them
so
can
good.
Be pretty fun too, with translating, to English from Chinese or whatever. It can be pretty fun. I had a dinning set that I put together, spelled wrong from, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's kind of the tough thing with all the, you know, transcribing type, you know, automatic AI stuff, right? There's just this percentage of error that's guaranteed.
Yeah.
And it's like the type of error that like definitely, it's like those posts on Facebook. Then they're like, an AI wrote a romance novel, and it's like the most horrendous thing. But you're like, yeah, I can kind of see that though. You know, it's like it's close, but it's not really. You
The
know,
Harry Potter ones are my favorite.
They're
Seriously.
getting
It's like
there, though.
Hermione's hair was spiders. I'm like,
I
like,
mean,
came close.
there's some really creepy ones out there. I mean, you know, that makes me feel this descript thing. I keep thinking about this. This makes me feel a little bit better about that technology because it wouldn't be so foolproof, right? Like it's not going to be the exact inflection. So you would know, right? Like you would know a bad deep fake, you know, a shallow fake.
I think that there's a lot of neat ways to use that technology, but I think right now it's bridging gaps. I think that a conversation between two people typed into it would be really noticeable. But I think like if you forgot a sentence, or if you wanted to add a section that you didn't have a chance to record, or you don't want to read, you know, a 50-page document, I think that you can really do a lot with it. And I'm excited to see that technology advance, because I think that there's a lot of interest in voice technology right now, a lot of interest in voice and entertainment, and it's going to impact advertising and the media, like the content itself, all of it.
Well, you know, and that's what I was just about to say. Like that kind of dials in on the DAI too, right? Like if you could just if you if you could eliminate having to record something, you could just type it into a descript ad maker and create like a narrator for the script for whatever the ad is. Then you can like completely remove people. Although I guess that takes away the cachet of like the host read thing.
Yeah, and this week, that was really fun to dig into this week with the dynamic ad insertion, because so many times, I mean, I've had a great opportunity to be on a bunch of podcasts, and everyone, you know, talks about dynamic ad insertion. They're like, do you think people are going to be okay with all those announcer read ads? And I had to correct them, because dynamic ad insertion doesn't have to be just like announcer read ads. Like baked in ads really have a lot of value. If right now we advertise a product without skipping a beat, right, and it's woven in here and you can't remove it out, that's a baked in ad that has a lot of value. And I think people should still sell that. But you could also just add like a silent dynamic ad insertion spot there, just so you can track it, right? Just so you know that it happened, that you can see it analytically, that you consider that inventory and that it was filled. But there are other things where we can say like, and we'll be back after the break, and then we have that dead air. And then in there, an editor can enter in that host read dynamic inserted ad in the same way that we could have just said it right there. But now we can filter through that, right? Now we can take advantage of the fact that that advertiser is only going to exist for the next 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. And they're not only going to be just on this episode, but on every download in that time period. And so that means that you fully own your inventory, right? Like we think back to the New York Times when they moved into the iPad space, or even the web. Like if they bought an ad in a newspaper, that ad was in there forever. But how long does the ad stay in a website? How long does the ad stay in a digital magazine? And the answer very quickly became, it doesn't. You buy a set number of downloads or a set period of time, and then that's our space. We can resell it.
Well, and you mentioned in your article the difference between baked-in ads and dynamically inserted ads. Can you explain for our listeners what a baked-in ad and how that's different from these dynamic inserted ads and what the value is there?
Yeah, so the baked in would be that like the MP3, the whole file that is being edited is going to have the ad in it and the content all in one file, right? And that file is uploaded to the ad server or the podcast hosting platform, and that's all downloaded in one piece. Dynamic insertion would be if basically the content was cut into chunks. So there's content, an ad break, content, an ad break, content, and then in the ad server, in the podcast hosting platform, we identify those breaks, and we set the ad up in there to target those breaks so that when someone goes to download it, it says content, is there an ad available? If yes, it stitches it. Content, is there an ad available? If yes, it stitches it. Content. And then it creates a unique MP3 for each listener pressing play or download.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I've got two different clients that I only have two clients that are doing ads right now, and one of them just takes the whole file from me, and they chop it up in Acast themselves because they give you the tools to kind of cut things. They kind of find a pause in the conversation, and their manager does that themselves. So I'm not involved in that. And then the other client would have me upload the different chunks, like you're saying. So when I'm editing, I would export. Here's this first section, here's the second section, here's the third section, and upload them as separate MP3 files, and then drag in where we drop the ad markers for the platform to insert it.
Yeah. A lot of the platforms now will take one file, and then you just look in the editor, like a waveform editor, for where the breaks are, and you put those in there. Yeah. Some of them will still take the individual cut up files. But it's funny that you say that you only have two clients that do ads. I'm sure you have a bunch more clients, right?
Yeah.
Any of them selling a product today, like a brand new something in the last 6 months?
Well, this is a thing. I've got one of my clients that's been doing their podcast for a while, and they're starting a new subscription service, and I'm just waiting for them to record the ads for me so that I can add them. But they're on Libsyn. And when you're on Libsyn, they don't have the same dynamic ad insertion tools. You have to go through them, and I don't know how it works because you have to sign up for their whole monetization tier, and we're not going to be doing that. So I'm going to be dynamically inserting them myself, and I'll just re-upload the MP3 file, which you also mentioned in the article.
Yeah. I think that Libsyn is a fantastic company that got us, where we are in the podcast space. I really hope that they step up their entry into dynamic ad insertion because I think it's going to be table stakes. I believe Buzzsprout just announced that they have it. Captivate has it with, Megaphone off the table, so to speak. And, I posted a wild rumor today or wild suggestion today about Art19 that it's going to, everybody's going to have dynamic ad insertion because that middle tier or that high tier even of hosting is gone. And so everybody's going to want to be able to replicate that. The idea of enterprise platforms, everybody can be enterprise if you have dynamic ad insertion and the right login capabilities and all that. So, good on you. That's probably more billable hours, but I guarantee you that client would be better served if they migrated off Libsyn or if Libsyn increased the availability of that feature. But my example there was, right, so they have a new subscription service. If they had 5 years of content, right, even if it was a daily show, right, like if a Tech Meme Ride Home or The Daily or The Newsworthy, any of these shows that are just why are you listening to an older version? There still are people listening to them and downloading them today, downloading months old episodes. If you had that, you could go into the platform, you could do add pre-roll to all shows, right? Some platforms allow you to do that in batch. A lot of the companies would allow you to just send in a request and they can automatically add it if it's at the actual 00 mark. And then you just add a pre-roll that says, hey, I'm glad, thanks for listening. This is an older episode, but I wanted to tell you from the future, not only should you subscribe, but also I have this brand new service that you should check out. And now you're getting in front of everyone, not just the people who are listening going forward, but the people who found that weird episode that talked about that skin cream that they were really interested in and nobody talked about before, and your podcast had it, and they found it that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And these guys are management consultants, so they definitely have people going back and listening to old episodes, and that's something I'll definitely have to talk with them about for sure.
Well, and Adam, we were just talking about this the other day about you made a comment in one of the last episodes of as a business. So Adam has, Chuck Levin's Music Center and Podcast Outfitters. And it's how does Podcast Outfitters, get their ads dynamically inserted, right? Who's brokering those? Are the advertisers supposed to go to the hosting company?
Are you for Can you say? Oh, I don't quite understand. I'm sorry.
Like, so if a business like Adam's business wanted to actually create ads to put on people's podcasts, right? Like how does that get brokered? Like, I understand the transaction from, the podcast host and baking into their podcast, but what about the advertiser? How do they get into that fold?
Yeah, well, I mean, these tools are available to the direct publisher. So I picked Wooshka as a hosting platform for my podcast coming out later in January because I really like the tech, and they're a company that's really supported me since I started, and I thought it'd be really fun to use like a tech demo. I'm gonna have probably 8 different pieces of dynamic ad insertion in there, all entered in by myself. So anybody with access to dynamic ad insertion on their own podcast could do that. So that means they could sell it direct. Now, Adam, if you wanted to record it or you wanted to get a celebrity to record it, like Molly to do the voiceover for the ads,
I'm available.
then in that situation, you could just record it and you could go a higher level, right? You could go to Megaphone or Art19 who do like second seat seller. They say, I have some of these shows, but I have hundreds of others in these categories, and let's target by the user, right? Or you could go to AdsWiz or Triton or Acast, who can sell some of their shows directly or sell them programmatic by different targeting options. So if you wanted to go host read, you can go direct to the publisher. You can go to some of the networks like AdvertiseCast or AdLarge or Midroll, or you could you could go to the programmatic partners as well. There's a lot of options. It just depends on what you're trying to get across. Now, I mean, the cool thing about it is if you wanted to take it even further and you want to say, hey, I'm going to have a different deal every single day. So what I'd really like to do is I'm going to provide you with a VAST tag. Now, so instead of you giving an audio file or the host giving, doing the read and creating that audio file for the ad, a VAST tag says, this is where, when the ad is ready to go, call another ad server. So the publisher's ad server then calls another ad server. And Adam, you could easily set one up and have access to a VAST tag where on your end, you have your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday deals. And you record all those creatives. And on your end, it says, if it is Monday, return this creative. If it's Tuesday, return this creative. Each one has a different promo code and all of that. And you're able to update your deals in real time without having to bug the publisher to upload a new file every single time. And that's on every episode that VAST tag fires on.
And so he could do something like that on one of those platforms you just mentioned?
Yeah. So the hosting platforms I know that support VAST are...
What's VAST stand for? Can you hear me, by the way? When I had to replug my microphone.
Yeah.
I'm totally not sure if I could be heard this entire time so far.
No,
I was wondering why you haven't said anything. I'm like, is he okay?
I didn't want to interrupt and not be heard and totally throw everything off. So what is a VAST tag? Tell me more. I'm super interested now.
Yeah. This is Adam.
I have my pen out. I'm taking notes now. I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, so VAST stands for Video Ad Serving Template, and that's because DAST, Dynamic Audio Ad Serving Template, was not catchy, so they had it separate for a while, and then they folded it back into it. And so it basically all it is instead of uploading an MP3, it's a URL that says, you're ready to serve this ad, but the princess is in another castle. Talk to this ad server over here. They're going to decide what we actually serve. And so if you host with, Omni or I believe Simplecast, definitely Megaphone and Art19 and several others out there that are getting ready for it, basically you can, instead of putting an MP3 file, you put that VAST URL, which calls another ad server, and you could host your own creatives through VAST on, I believe, AdsWiz and Triton and even Google's DoubleClick Campaign Manager. You could just use that for regular audio, and it just gives you full control. It says instead of one static file that the publisher has to handle, I can handle all of it myself. It's pretty neat. I mean, what you're trading is the actual person-to-person experience for a little bit of technology, and it sounds daunting, but a long weekend setting it up, and then you can usually cut out 2 or 3 hours per campaign of person-to-person interaction. You can also pivot real quickly. If Adam finds out that his Monday ad does way better than his Tuesday ad midday on through Tuesday, he can just kill the Tuesday ad and go back to the Monday ad.
But you still have to set it up through each different hosting platform or something like that, right? Or through the individual podcasts. There's no this is kind of what we were talking about last time, is that there's no Facebook or Google for me to say, hey, here's my ad, give it to these target audiences everywhere as in like a shotgun approach, because like I might not know I want to be on this podcast and this podcast because I might be blind to a world of different podcasts out there that might be totally relevant to what I want to talk about, and without knowing, I don't really have a way to access that an audience just yet. The data is not available to me as an advertiser without being involved in the different hosting platforms.
So so that would be more programmatic, right? So that means through like AdsWizz or Triton, you could very easily just go into like create an account in those platforms as an advertiser, upload your creatives however you want, handle the rotation exactly like we talked about, and say, this is an ad that I want to serve on podcasts about podcasts to people only in these specific countries when they download at this specific time of day. And AdsWizz, for example, even does like keyword targeting because they transcribe and contextualize all of the episodes. So they have about 1 million episodes where you can do that as well. And you could say avoid shows that say, I don't know, Trump, right? And so then you can create that and you can just send that out there, and that's open marketplace. Now, not a lot of podcasts are available on open marketplace, especially with the higher tier ones, because they're focused on direct sales and private marketplaces and more controlled environments. But in that situation, you're not actually worried too much about the specific show, right? You don't care if it's on Joe Rogan. What you care about is, am I finding people like the people on Joe Rogan? Am I finding like I'm looking for the user? Now, that gets a little bit tricky because we only got IP address in podcasting. And so when privacy starts to become a bigger thing, especially in the US, you're not going to be able to do demographic matches through Nielsen to figure out, does this person make, or the household at least make $150,000 a year? Are they in the market to buy a truck, right? But today you can in the US. Outside the US, not so much. But you can infer, the what they're looking for by the type of content they're listening to.
Interesting. That really kind of dives deep on this like privacy issue of, who's masking the IP addresses, who's not, what kind of jeopardy is that putting people in? But then thinking about advertising, like, how do you get analytics on those users, if you don't really have the data on them?
Yeah, so I think we're gonna lose some on the targeting side and the attribution side in the near future, and we're gonna have to find something more clever to do that. But they're, Chartable and Podsights and Claritas are all well-funded attribution and lift study partners in this space. Nielsen and Claritas and LiveRamp are also demographic partners that are working really hard to exist in this space. So I'm not worried about having options, but I will say that it's probably a good idea to not really rely on being able to track the individual user and really explore more about the content side. I'm real bullish on that. And I know it's so funny from an ad tech side to be like, forget about figuring out exactly how much money someone has in their wallet right now. And instead just, get a feeling for the show they're listening to. But I think it tells people a lot, right? I think that if you look at what the content is in the show, you can learn a lot about someone. And so I'm not worried, but I think you're right. Privacy is going to kick up. IP is the lowest on the rungs for people to really, scream about. But
Right.
it is a concern. GDPR in other countries, like you just can't do anything with IP. It's as personal as your name.
Well, and that's because some of these advanced companies like Facebook and some of the other ones, which Facebook is now crying foul with Apple because Apple's browser is blocking a lot of their tracking tech. But that's a whole other topic. But they'll extrapolate and they'll create profiles that they can track, even though they have the IP address. They'll see, okay, this is this IP address and it has this screen size and they use this browser. So I know that this person has gone to this website and looked at this on Amazon and that sort of thing. So even though they don't know your name or email address or whatever, they're still compiling profiles, and that's just creepy.
Yeah, but a part of it's creepy. I'm not gonna lie to you, but people aren't using the data to the extent that they can. I mean, James Cridland wrote an amazing piece on privacy that he shared the other day about Apple. So the Apple podcast app, first off, will share your IP address. All podcast apps do, because the publisher needs to know that. So like NPR, for example, can determine what is local content to you and share that. Now there's where we get into the actual privacy side of it is more around using it for advertising. So they have a right to use it for content, but not for advertising if you've opted out of these things. But Apple Podcasts, by default, I believe it's every hour, it will ping from your phone every podcast that you have downloaded. It'll ping their RSS feed. So where Overcast or Spotify or all these other ones have a central server that ping, and then if you are subscribed to something and there is a new episode, it'll send you a notification from their server, and then you download it. You're making the pings hourly saying, is there a new episode? Megaphone, Art19, these big publishers, realistically, I listen to enough specific shows hosted on Megaphone that if Megaphone looked at it from every hour, I would have some sort of unique fingerprint related to my IP address at home, and then an IP address that resolves relatively in the same geolocation, and then an IP address at an office that is realistically drivable in the distance between the last ping, and then back at home. And they could do that, but they also can't figure out how to do forecasting for available inventory yet. So I'm not super worried about these big companies doing that, but it's there and it is creepy. But I'll just take not getting an ad for the product that I literally just bought. Try and sell me the accessories instead of try and sell me another version of the same product.
Yes.
Amen to that. Yeah, I bought like a template thing the other day, and now like I see that person's ads all the time. I'm like, dude. And then I've told Facebook that I already purchased it 3 times, and they're still serving me those ads and charging that woman for it too.
Yeah. And and ad fraud is something that as an industry gets bigger, it's going to make a bigger impact. There was a report the other day that I think Uber went from $150 million in ad spend to $20 million dollars in ad spend and saw no actual difference in their conversions and acquisitions. Wow. And some of it was through nefarious partners. And, I think we're a little bit away from that in podcasting, but the truth is that budgets are going to start getting eaten up by brand safety. And so if we want to treat podcasting like programmatic, if we want to treat it like Facebook and Google and things like that, then we're also going to have to pay for services that safeguard us, and we're going to have to trust them and invite them into the space. But if we treat it more like influencer marketing, and we acknowledge that it's a little bit hands-on, you can't go into Trade Desk and mass buy influencer marketing. It just doesn't work. But influencer marketing is a $10 billion industry last year, I believe. If we look at podcasting like influencer marketing, I think it's going to go a lot further. And it still means we can use the cool ad tech, right? It still means that Adam can put a different ad for his product based on, are you physically in driving distance from my stores, or do I have to ship to you, right? That's a big difference. Or Marcus, for your, you build studios. I'm sure there's a radius where you're not willing to go and build a studio. So you could easily do an ad that says that, like it's a different message depending on how close the person is to where you want to have a different message. And a host just reads the ad twice. They set that up once and they forget about it.
I feel like there's a real opportunity in the industry for like to be that broker, like to be like just to, I mean, as a business owner, you're constantly learning new stuff, how to run Facebook ads, how to do Instagram. I mean, it's just like and then right when you figure one out, the other one's changed everything, and you're just in this endless loop of understanding different platform algorithms, right? And so like understanding this ad tech feels a little overwhelming as an advertiser. So I'm surprised that there's not more of like there might be a Heartcast Media ad, concierge service where I'll set up your AdsWiz account because I'm pretty handy with the computer. But like, I feel like that's probably going to be part of this next wave of the industry, because we're talking so much about how many advertising dollars are being spent by these huge companies, right? But like, who's brokering those deals, And obviously for the bigger ones, it's probably internal, but like to reach out, there's a lot of communication to podcasters on the podcast platforms and in the podcast world. But then how do you reach a retailer who just wants to get their ads on podcasts? That's like Adam's in podcasting. He sells podcast gear. And it's still a little bit like, wait, what? You know what I mean? And I can relate. I'm a business owner, right? It's like, so now I'm compelled to go look at AdsWiz, but like, I feel like there's a real opportunity there for someone who's like, hey, I understand it. I'm going to go rally people and be like, stop spending money on Facebook. You can advertise on podcasts locally. You know,
the hard part is that comparison's so tough because Facebook is going to show you those clicks in real time. And so you can have that anxiety and panic attack in real time as your money is slipping away and you're not getting the conversions. Adam's laughing because he knows exactly what that's like. But then you hit gold one day and then you just throw more money into it and it says that you hit gold, and then you do your books at the end of the month and you're not really sure where you made the extra money. But Facebook says you did, because there was a pixel and they're incentivized to do that and people clicked on the ads. Where podcasting sometimes for a local business could kind of be like asking them to do a billboard, right? And so they got to buy into it and they got to want it and they want to try it. And so the less money you have for advertising, the more scary something is that isn't one-to-one tracked, but it doesn't mean it's any less accurate. It doesn't mean it's any less powerful, but people are just nervous. And that's why in the bigger companies, they get trained on these things. They want to see a report. The reason why people pick the same attribution companies and lift report companies and multi-touch attribution companies is because they like the report that shows the arrow going up and to the right. And they like being able to show that to their boss, who just looks at the image instead of opening up the whole file and just thumbs up the next spend. And that's the end of it, because there is a lot. And that lot that goes away for the small business owner doesn't go away when you're the person managing the ads for a large company, because everybody's just got too much on their plate. So it's a lot of money changing hands fast and hoping for the best.
Well, what about a business that's like, okay, I'm all in, like Adam. He's like, I'm in. I want to run a bunch of ads. Like, how much money would somebody need to spend on placing their advertisements inside of podcasts to see a return? Do you have any metrics on that kind of stuff, or what an average spend is, or is that data not even available?
So there's not a lot of benchmarks because people are still real private about the data. I mean, one of the initiatives I have is called the Product Deep Dive series, where I'm trying to get everybody to start pitching in public. Because if like I have to sign an NDA to see how your product works, it's probably not a great product. And if I can't understand what it is based on the press release or your website, it's probably also a really difficult to use product. So I'm trying to get these people to walk me through and explain this stuff. And we're doing it. We did one in December. We got another one this month coming up with Triton Digital. I'm really excited about. But on the other side, there's a lot of people that, just like they try and keep like, oh, I know how to handle the ad tech, don't worry about it, I got it for you, as like secret sauce. They try and keep those results as secret sauce. So we're just not talking about it publicly yet. And I'm trying to fix that, because people need to understand, I can explain, like Molly, we could walk through right here an exact strategy. We could give somebody the exact steps to take. And the truth of it is, I'll leave a Bryan-sized hole in it, because there are people like, this stuff is not easy to do. It's easy to explain. And unless you decide you want to sit down and do it and become an expert at it, which I would love for people to do. I'd love more peers. I'd love to train more people on this stuff. If you just hear it, like, there's no risk. And if your competitor wants to copy it, then they have to disregard like 6 months of planned work to compete with you. So I'm hopeful that people start getting more open about this stuff and more open about metrics, instead of just kind of saying how bad or difficult things are, just so that they can keep a monopoly on it. But with Adam's store and what Adam sells, I think $500 could go a long way, right? I think
what's interesting. What Molly and I a while ago, we would talk about how podcasters could monetize because their audience was valuable to someone else. And then I always kind of had in my head that the podcaster has to go out and find the spot, like, come sponsor me. Like, I have the audience. This is valuable to you. Just come straight to me. And now we're kind of talking about the other way, that there's so many podcasts out there that I don't know which one's the right one to place my bets on. I just want to place my bet on all of them. And we're in it right now. Like it sounds like there's definitely tools out there, but you have to, like you said, you have to invest time and energy into making this new, it's not so new, but like this new network work for a business owner. I'm sure there's lots of businesses that could benefit from advertising on podcasts, but
Yeah.
I as an owner, I'm not being advertised to by the platforms to say, come advertise with me. I have to go hunt it out and figure out like the strategy and go, and not everyone's going to take the time to do that, which means it's also a golden opportunity.
You're so right there. And like, okay, so picture this. Everybody who buys from Podcast Outfitters, what happens if you just ask them their top 10 favorite podcasts? Because I guarantee you they could name them. And then there's overlap. And then you reach out to them, right?
Bang, bang,
or ask them if they do a podcast. Yeah, dude, write that down. Ask them if they do a podcast, right? You have your affiliate service, which is really cool. But how cool would it be if I could have the Bryan Barletta setup? You know, you throw my logo on there, you make it a little bit cool. It's my specific gear, right? And now you're a sponsor. You throw a little bit of money towards them. They get to keep their percentage, or it's a guarantee up front for the percentage. You have an interesting setup with what you have because you're marketing to podcasters. So they're the people that are listening to this stuff and the people that are creating this stuff. I guess if I sold, cool T-shirts that were available worldwide, like that's tough. Now I have to figure out what's on the T-shirts and like what type of content those T-shirts resonate with. But that's also why you do it like influencer marketing. I'm blanking out on the underwear company that literally just sent out like 1 million pairs of their underwear to people and was just like, hey, I would love for you to try these out. Here's what, if you decide to take a picture of yourself in this underwear, here's the hashtags to use. And they got a ton of people doing it. And it cost them kind of nothing. So there's rooms to do that in podcasting. If someone sent me something random and I had a weekly or daily podcast and it was at all relevant to talk about, I would bring it up. And so, I think the truth is that we talk about the growth of podcasting, and it's like we've expanded from the US to the far off country of Canada, and we're in the UK and Australia, and one day we will be treating EU as part, like in the UK, all like separately. And it's so funny. Like, we're not thinking local. And I truly believe that people like you, Adam, have a real opportunity to make a killing, because if you get super targeted, if you get these small people, these small podcasts that are really going to be passionate about it, you're gonna way underpay for the performance you get out of it.
That's something that, yeah, and that's something my wife actually, who does marketing for authors, but we used to work with musicians, and so, but she says it for both authors and musicians is to start local with your marketing campaign, and that she does social media stuff. She's not doing as much advertising, but it all apply, like what you're saying. That's absolutely true. No matter what business you're in, if you just try to start local and then dig in and just kind of build out from there. Like if you're a band, you just hop in a van and drive to the next town over and do a gig and then come back home, and you're not, flying to the West Coast or whatever, because that costs a lot of money. So same thing with podcasting. That's awesome. I love it.
It's interesting as because you said that there's no like benchmarks out there really for what's a reasonable spend. I had conversations a while ago about people that wanted to charge me, and maybe it was worth it. I don't know. There's no benchmark. Hundreds of dollars per episode to put an ad in a single episode on some dude's podcast down the street. But like, I'm like thinking to myself, is that right? Or is that going to work or not? I mean, you can try it out, but I'd rather at that point, I was like, I'd rather just throw that money into Facebook, and I know I'm going to hit the people, and I'm going to at least going to get the data out of it, if nothing else. I've come a long way since that conversation, and there's definitely a bigger mechanism to it, but still, it's what's the right ad spend, and how am I going to justify that spend? How am I ensuring that those sales are coming through this channel, and that spend is worth it, or am I getting the right people and that kind of thing? So it's a very interesting. I love the numbers. I love being able to see certain the clicks. It is gratifying or not, and terrifying. There is that instant gratification, but to see a number and see a chart and see things happening and have that net out into sales based on a pixel, yes, and that they're driven to make that pixel look really nice and shiny. So on the flip side of it, how do you know what is right? Am I underspending? Am I overspending? And, not having just the kind of tools to necessarily just like, I'm going to try this month and test and test and test and see what happens and get that data back. But I'm I'm about to jump with both feet. Like I'm ready to rock.
Yeah. I honestly, after this, I'd love to talk to you more about it because I think there's some really cool things we can do. And the coolest part about it is that you have a podcast and you're interested in sharing those numbers. So we could share those numbers. We could work on a project together where you're very transparent about it because there's a big difference, right? Like Sounds Profitable is a 2,000 person newsletter about people in the podcast industry that want to learn about podcast ad tech. So your companies make great sense there. And so maybe that hundreds of dollars an episode is too low because I have such a targeted, responsive audience that are people that honestly, every phone call I get on with anybody talking in the space or this or the newsletter, they're like, wow, you look and sound great. And those headphones are so cool. And if I was just like, well, yeah, I mean, I got them right here, right? That's the type of thing that makes a difference.
Yeah.
But then there are other shows that, very cool of them. They hit 10,000 downloads in a month, but their ad reads sound like this, and they're just reading it to get the $100 that month. And, and the audience doesn't respond, right? There are people who listen and they're legitimate people, but they don't care about the ads. They're hit and skip, right? And it's hard to find that. And I think the truth is, as a small business, I think the best way is to try it out direct if you can, or work with, I'd say, like smaller publisher representation, like True Native Media represents some really cool mid-tier podcasts that are not mid-roll, are not the ones on AdvertiseCast or AdLarge. They're not big noticeable names, but they'll work with you and they'll say, okay, well, it's going to be a little bit higher than you could buy direct, but it's because we're going to put something unique together and we're going to make sure that you're not overspending here or there. And we're going to do one episode here and one there. And we're going to read the results and work with you on optimizing it. So I really think that's the next area of growth. These people that take the mid and small tier publishers and do something with them to help them sell, because that means they can sell across all those publishers. But it also means that I, as a small podcast, I can be like, I only have 1,000 downloads a month, but this company really liked my content, but I don't have enough impressions. I can kick it up to my network partner, the person representing me, and say, can you do audience extension? So I think local is going to be huge. I think small business and podcasting is going to be huge. I think if Amazon tomorrow woke up and allowed IP address into their attribution pixel for purchases on Amazon.com, I think there would be 1 million more people purchasing ads on podcasting like overnight. So the space is going to grow, and it's not only just going to be from the big companies getting into it, it's going to be from the small companies moving their spend.
I mean, yeah, Adam, you're killing it with the Google. Every website I go on, they're like, podcast outfitters. I'm like, you guys know that I'm on this website like 6 times a day already.
But that's what interests me about the opportunity in podcasting, and like it is the very nichey, like you might only have 500 downloads or whatever, but like those people love what you have to say, and that trusted audience. Molly, I mean, like we talked about it on many late nights, just how cool these, you can have a podcast about cool pens, and there's probably a couple hundred people out there that'll listen to you just yammer on about pens. But like, what else are those people interested in? And that's an opportunity to monetize for the podcaster. And it's a matter of how to connect the businesses and the small podcaster that might not be so business savvy to make that connection so that they can monetize and I can find value in that audience.
Yeah, I would say that if I had any sort of company that was selling a physical product, I would find my biggest competitor that is worth talking about and find the most recent release and of like a product, and then I would search for it. And I would see what podcasts are talking about it and how big those podcasts are. And you can use tools like Podchaser or Podscribe is another great one, or Rephonic. And all these tools will let you enter in that podcast and look at how big their reach is and how many downloads they have. And then the podcasts that are similar to them outside of just Apple, but other algorithm choices that they have. Thought Leaders is another great example that will let you do stuff like that. That's really neat. I mean, like an easy one for you, Adam, the MV7, right? Everyone's talking about it. Any podcast that spent an entire episode or worth putting it in their show notes or title is probably worth someone throwing a few bucks to see what happens, because people want to buy something like what they have or buy accessories for what they have, and they're researching this, right? So I think there's a lot of room.
Speaking of the MV7, have you sold more MV7 since we launched the podcast?
I mean, it is the new standard of podcasting. Like, boom,
I know. Look at that.
there it is.
I switched from my Yeti X after getting scolded.
Thank God.
Coming from the video game space, I feel like I was representing appropriately, but then I was told I was wrong.
Came on this podcast with the Yeti X. I think
That's
Molly
right.
and Marcus would have just
You would have been
you just would
chastised.
have been out.
Even more
I would
so
ask for the free sponsorship, right? That's how I should have plugged it in. No, but I think stuff like that's really neat. And I think that the world went remote for a whole year, and not
and it
everybody
ain't
filmed
over
that.
yet, man.
Yeah.
We're going into year 2.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. They're like, we're confident we're going to be back July. I'm like, cool.
Yeah, we got a vaccine now.
Yeah, man. That's a beautiful thing. Confidence is key, my man, but like, we're not going to be there. There's
Yeah.
no conferences happening in July.
Yeah.
Madness.
And I had it out for USB microphones before. Like I was like, my job in the music store side of things was like, do not buy a USB microphone. It is money down the drain. Buy this interface and buy this microphone instead. You will spend more money and you will be so much happier that I told you to do this. You're welcome. Good day. And that was like literally every day, just like, no. And I barely stocked any, barely at all, 0. And then as soon as April rolled around, I was buying more USB microphones than I could ever imagine. And there was a place for them before, but it was kind of like, oh, you don't want to do anything. You just want to like sound okay and like make it work. Now there's good stuff. I'm using a USB microphone right now, and I am you guys said it sounds better than my most favorite microphone of all time that you guys hate so much.
So fill us in because you sound pretty good, man. That was a really smooth segue, by the way. I love that.
Wasn't
Yeah.
it? It's my job. I'm gonna be gentle this time so I don't unplug myself. But this, I just opened this up like 4 seconds before we turned this on, and it worked, and I'm very pleased to say that. PreSonus, our friends at PreSonus, just came out with a microphone called the Revelator, and
Sounds great.
It's similar to the MV7 in some ways in that it's got an app that took me 0 time to download. I was a little concerned because they make a lot of recording software and they make all this stuff, and I was like, man, am I gonna have to like download all kinds of junk to like open up and launch this? No, I have this super cool thing on my screen right now that I can sound like you guys heard. I could sound like all kinds of robot kind of stuff if I want to, but I plugged it in and it worked. And you guys were like, wow, you guys sound way better than you have any other time. I'm like, man, I need to
And
change
it's like
my
a
microphone
foot from
out.
your mouth, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
you need it closer.
yeah.
That's the thing I was going to say. It's
Well,
a little too far.
I mean,
I think he sounds great that far away. That's what's even more impressive.
Considering,
it's
yeah.
impressive.
Hey.
Most used microphones, you got to get them either close up or crank it up. Marcus is our resident audio file. We'll be generous and call him audio file, but always giving me
Audio
crap.
maniac. Yeah.
Audio
I heard
monster.
the ambulance going by earlier.
Yeah.
But like, how great would that be, right? That's the perfect type of microphone for someone who's, between 30 and 60 in a sales position that hopefully will be able to travel again, that might have a Macintosh that is struggling, right? If you can get them a pair of headphones or even just let them use their AirPods, right? But they have a microphone. And then the next part is cameras, right? Like that's where I put a lot of effort into it. I realized if I was going to be on camera for 20 plus hours a week and recording things that I need to look good, there's not the equivalent accessible thing there yet. And then lighting, right? All these different things that like the second that you make it accessible, the second that I can be, a tech unsavvy salesperson and I can sound like this and look like this, like,
Yeah.
I get the elitism and like the things that you guys do, and not a negative way, right? Of being like sounding good and sounding professional and the nuances that you guys bring to it. But there's 90% of the space out there that if you can plug it in and you don't hear the ambulance and you don't hear their spit in their mouth, or descript takes care of things like that, then at the end of the day, that's enough. And
What do you mean you don't want to hear the spit in people's mouth? That's like,
man, I was on podcast pontifications and I finally listened to it because Eve was like, "I'll take care of it," and I turned it on and I was like, "You can hear every drop of spit in my mouth. I'm like, I can't believe you didn't kick that back over to me and ask me to redo it. I'm embarrassed.
I need to get on Evo to use that RX8 mouse declick plugin he's got.
He said he ran it through it.
Oh, really? And it was still there?
Yeah, I'm real bad. Very, very wet mouth, I guess.
Well, you're not dehydrated, so
yeah.
you know.
I always get on a call and the lights are so bright, and I'm really excited. I'm like, oh yeah, this will be the time that I don't drink water during the entire call, so I don't sound gross. And then I'm just like, I was like, oh, I'm out of water. I drank a gallon on this call.
Whoa,
that's hilarious.
Apple juice.
That's the acidity in it kind of breaks up some of that.
Pro tip right there.
Yeah.
The camera game though is the one that I think is the one that to come next. Like there's like, the microphones are fairly accessible to sound halfway decent without dropping like major money. But the camera game,
still out of reach.
It's still out of reach. Like you guys, no offense, Molly. I mean, I know you just upgraded, but these two dudes look super impressive. I know I'm using like super junky webcam.
Wait, I don't look impressive?
Molly, you always look impressive.
You have the better background and like the better floor lighting. Like you have the better setup.
Well, going for like the Barbarella
Bryan
look tonight.
Bryan looks like he's Bryan and Marcus. They look like they're on a movie. Like they look like they're in like I'm in an IMAX movie, and like they just look like they're like almost in slow mo, but they're not in slow mo, and their backgrounds are blurred, and everything's super cool. Like,
what camera do you have, Bryan?
It's the A6400, and I got a Sigma lens, a 30 millimeter fixed lens. And it was so funny. I went to pick it up, and they're like, "You're gonna have a lot of fun with that." And I was like, "It's gonna be stationary on my desk forever."
Tons of fun though.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but the hard part about it is it's just not accessible, right? Because it's not just the camera, it's the lighting, right? I got a Mevo camera because I signed up for a Vimeo account, and they're just like, it's a 4K camera. I'm like, it looks like trash. And so the jump is just not there yet. But there it is for microphones, and it is for headphones. And right now, people are somehow okay with the up the nose MacBook Pro look. And maybe that will be what we accomplish in 2021. But the accessibility of these things means that more people are going to be comfortable making podcasts, making content and different things, trying things out. And that's where creativity comes from. And it's weird. I always find it weird on my end because I'm the ad tech guy, and people are like, making the dollars, like selling Casper mattresses. And I'm like, yeah, but like you could do cool things with this technology. Like, you can do sequential ads that tell a story throughout a podcast. You can do so many neat things. In my podcast, I'm actually gonna, call out what device they're on, and I'll be like, I hear you're listening to this on a smart speaker. How bold of you! I hope I don't swear in front of your children. We'll have fun with it.
Oh man, yeah. You could be like, "Are you getting high right now?" Just put that on every Joe Rogan podcast ever made. Yes,
you can see me.
I am. Oh man. I mean, well, I also really feel like if you're gonna do any sort of digital presentation, like you gotta level your game up, Buttercup, because I am sick of your shit. Like I cannot listen to another bad. Like we're 8 months in, man. Like I don't want to sign up for a webinar or something from like reputable people, and I'm excited to hear this industry expert like talk about whatever. And like 5 minutes in, I'm like, yeah, no, I care about my mental health. Therefore, I am not going to listen to this podcast because I can't hear it. I just hear the noise, but I can't hear it, man. And like my brain won't allow me to hear it. And I just don't understand, because if you're doing keynote speeches, you're not showing up in like your workout outfit. So if you're going to do keynote speeches in 2021, like you need to get a microphone and you need to get a camera. And like, yes, that might be a little bit classist, but like if you're doing keynote speeches, like you're making money, dude. Like I'm not talking about like if you're, an intern in a company, don't buy a camera. Yeah. Fuck those people. You know what I mean? They're not paying you enough. But like if you're trying to, be an industry leader in any category whatsoever, and you want to show up that way. And honestly, like doing it sooner than everybody else puts you ahead of the curve, because people, we're getting to the point now with digital presentations where people are like, hey, record a video and send it to us. And of course, they're going to pick the people with the best camera and microphones, because that's what you do when you're
changing now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's, I started the product deep dives, like I'd mentioned, because I was first off tired of like timed webinars. I don't have time for it. I really don't. I don't have time for your virtual event either. I'm not going to sit through it. I'm the pod fronts, right? Where the presentation, there's the pod fronts and the podcast up fronts and the X fronts, and they're all really cool, right? I'm very happy that we were doing them. But they're like 8 hours. And it's similar presentations each day with a host, and inevitably someone's screen sharing, and you can see the leave button on their Zoom meeting, and it's just unattractive to watch. The audio quality was just not there because people weren't taking it seriously, and if I couldn't make it, I couldn't access it again. So for me, like when I did the deep dives, the first thing I said was I need to hire a video editor. And so we took like Twitch inspired, like my head's in like a circle and we got a little overlay at the bottom and all these fun little things. And it made a huge difference, right? And then we said like, these can't be on demand anymore. The world's changed too much. The people that I'm trying to get in front of should not have time in their day to adhere to my schedule. My content's got to adhere to theirs. And so, don't chase that email list. Put content out there. If it's good, people are going to interact with it. You can still advertise it the same way. You can still try and capture emails and capture interaction and engagement. And those chat rooms are trash. The chat rooms from live webinars are real bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think the whole space has got it needs to upgrade. But I think you're right. The people who are ahead of the curve are probably already equipped with it right now. And hopefully everybody else catches up quickly.
Or they got it for Christmas. I've been really pushing people, posting videos on. I mean, you've seen. I've just been like, "Come on, man, we gotta do this, man." Yep. So I have a really important question to ask you that I've been wanting to ask you this whole time, and I keep forgetting. Yeah. Who makes the artwork for your newsletter?
Oh man, so that's my college roommate, Jake Crow.
He's a genius.
I love it.
It's so good. I was like, "Is this stock?" And I was like, "No, this is hella custom. This is dope."
Yeah. When I was so the first two things I did when I was like so close to like being able to pay my bills, which sounds profitable, was I paid Evo for his time as an editor, and then I was just like, I'm really tired of spending 4 hours a week trying to find the perfect stock photo. Like, I think I found some pretty good ones. My post roll is bullshit. One has like a dude on a trash pile with like his finger to his lips, like, shh, don't tell everybody the secret. But me and Jake had these dreams of having a web comic. Jake was a great artist, and I was a mediocre dude with okay ideas. And so finally, when I had the opportunity, I was like, I can pay you this much a week, and what I'll do is I'll give you an idea, and you can do literally anything you want as long as it conveys that idea. And so he created those little guys, and we call them the Autobots, AUDO. And we've just been having fun with it too. There was supposed to be a third one, like part of my Lift Report series that we didn't end up doing, but he made like a mock of Rick and Morty as those characters. Nice, and so we're going to make it into a sticker for a referral program for the newsletter. But Jake Crow, dear friend of mine, we reconnected over COVID actually. I haven't talked in a few years. And he came on board. He'll be doing those going forward, and hopefully some infographics I can share too.
Yeah, man. Well, definitely, I'll grab all it from you after the show, but like any links of like stuff you mentioned tonight and like a link to his Instagram or however we can be supportive. But, I just thought it was so rad. I'm like, he's paying an artist to do this. And like, that's fucking awesome, man. I just want to say, like, especially artists right now, even if he has like a regular job, whatever, man, like artists are struggling right now, even if it's just because they can't connect to their audience the way they used to be able to. So I love that you have like, a real artist drawing the artwork. I think it's awesome, man. It's awesome.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to him as well.
Yeah, man. It's really good stuff for sure. Well, and Adam, I wanted to ask you, how much is that microphone that you're using?
$179.
Whoa.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
And it's USB?
USB. It's got couple presets. It's got like, broadcast mode and other different things. So like, I was just looking at it.
We need to put that thing on a boom arm, yo. That's what you need.
I'm pretty sure.
Every time you pick it up, Marcus is having a heart attack.
Doesn't look like you can. It doesn't look like you can. I literally just took it out of the box. Like, oh no, you totally can.
Yeah,
totally can. It has a mount right there.
5/8 thread on the bottom.
You totally has. Yeah, nice eye, Marcus.
Nothing gets past Marcus, man.
But I'm super impressed. Out of the box, worked super well. Just like the the MV7, different animal, not dynamic like the MV7. Pluses and minuses. We've talked about that before, but sounds really good. Headphones worked right away. I didn't like the first time I used an MV7. I had this weird echo thing going on. When we tried one of our earlier podcasts, we tried to use it. When we tried to do our promo thing, I couldn't handle it at all. Like I was a mess trying to use that thing for the first time and had to like get the drivers right or whatever. Plug and play on this one. A+ PreSonus. Way to go. Good job.
Nice.
They made it sound a little complicated, like because it has like reverb and all that. Like it has all, like you heard, it has all kinds of kooky stuff going on in it. Like this is, I guess they didn't quite know where it could land, and I don't think they've totally marketed it yet. Like it just got here like 2 days ago, but this is a winner. I'm super impressed.
Well, this is okay. So the PreSonus mic that we talked about a couple weeks ago, that was the XLR mic, right?
Yeah, they're just like their broadcast microphone.
So it sounds like PreSonus is like dipping their toe in the podcast pool. They're like, we're not going to just call it a full on like pod microphone, right? A pod mic, right? They'd get sued clearly, but you know what I'm saying? They're just like, you could do reverb.
Yeah, they're because they're a music company. Like they don't want to like, I guess like they got to kind of do this a little bit before they can go, but they're nailing it right now. I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I mean, I've definitely put them in the show notes a couple weeks now. They're definitely coming on strong with good products, man. 2021 is going to be the year of like being able to get a solid setup for not a lot of money, and I think you guys are right. Video is definitely the next frontier.
That's it.
I mean, that Shure MV88, man, that always comes up in conversation, but that connects with your iPhone, and so does the MV7 connects with your iPhone as well. So you could, do Zoom calls and stuff like that on an iPhone with a MV7 or the MV88, plugged in, and so that's like a cheat code to leveling up your video because your iPhone is going to be like 10 times better than your.
You want to be able to screen share. Like if you're doing it for the real deal, like you want to have it set up differently. And Zoom Recorder Zoom, who we talked about last time, is like killing it on the audio side of things. Zoom don't hate me, but their video stuff does not stack up. And they have their little Q2N that says it's 4K. That people call me up and be like, this is not good.
Well, the K is for kangaroos, so it's
not a good camera. A camera with a K, but it people buy it because it's like an answer, and people don't know what to buy in the world of webcams. They want to have a good microphone in it. There's webcams that have microphones that sound like junk, and they just dip out all the time and duck around. So it's a sloppy world out there on the video side of things. Or you shell out and you do it right. And you end up looking like you guys, and you guys, nail it, but it ain't $179 cheap.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not portable.
And it's not portable. It's not portable. I can roll out with my laptop and bring a microphone, and I'm set. And I'd be much happier that way. And we talked about it before, and I think it's changing now. Like, we talked about that you can get away with, like, okay video as long as your audio is on point. Like, no one's going to stick around if your audio sucks. Like if you're choppy or you're ducking in and out, like people or they sound tinny, like you're going to dip out. Like you don't want to listen to that, but you'll put up with halfway decent video if the audio is on point. But Molly, you were saying a minute ago, and I think you're dead on. People like one, it's way more noticeable now when someone has good video. You're like, whoa, you came to play. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am now very much enjoying this entire experience because we've come a long way since last March. In March, it was like, oh, you got on a Zoom call. Congratulations. I'm just happy to see you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. And now you're like, bro.
On MS penises. Like, we were just dodging like 12-year-olds on Zoom. But, remember those good old days?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I went through my phase where I had the bad webcam, and then I like was not interested in having the webcam on because I gained that sweet pandemic weight, and then I turned it back on, and I was like, oh, you can see my bald spot, and then I shaved my head, and now I love my camera. But you're super right. I think they got to solve that.
It's the new. It's becoming the new benchmark of like you're for real. You care about what you're putting out there. Your video's got to be on point.
Yeah. But even just framed well, lit well and framed well
Yeah.
is if I'm not looking up your nose and your audio is good, I'm probably okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But, you know, I feel like this is where Apple could really step in too, because, you know, and I don't know, well, Marcus has his to the side, but I have, you know, I have my desk here. I've got a riser and another riser, and then another like DJ stand, which like angles your laptop like kind of down and up a little bit, you know, so you can, like, if you're a DJ, you could easily find the next track, you know. And so my laptop like camera is pretty high up, and then I have my Canon or Sony, whatever it is, on a selfie stick in front of my face. And so it's actually covering part of your face, Bryan. So that way, when I'm looking at
Gives
you
you
guys,
the eye contact.
it kind of, I mean, this
Yeah.
is really the full eye contact, but like, I don't want to stare at it the whole time. I want to look
Yeah.
at y'all's faces. So like, but it's not comfortable, you know.
No.
And then when I'm done, I have to like you know, I can't work with it because I can't see the, you know, the status bar, you know what I'm saying? Like, so somebody needs to make like an alien desk. And I know like Marcus has shown us some like YouTube videos and stuff with all these arms and everything else, but like
enter Marcus's
like,
gonna hit the button
know.
again and show us what the hell's
I
going
know.
on.
I know Marcus has like 17 cameras.
Honestly, Apple's just gonna step it up. That's
That's
the truth of it.
that's what
I
it is.
skipped off of Macs for a while. I went back to a desktop PC because it was just having trouble outputting the audio and video correctly to the monitor that I wanted to use, and it didn't matter. It was the latest MacBook 13-inch or the 16-inch, and the fans were going like crazy, and it's all I heard in the background of the video. And I went PC, and I was like, well, I got the big setup, but eventually when I travel again, either I'm going to have a backpack full of cameras and microphones and junk like that, or Apple's going to get their shit together, and then I'll buy a new MacBook.
Yeah, because if there was like a MacBook with a fat daddy camera on it, I would totally buy that.
Well,
That's
even
what
if
the Pro
Apple-
should be.
Yeah, and even if Apple just made it so when you plug your USB cable in, you could use it as a webcam. It would be that simple, you know, to where you could have your iPhone and then because you can't, like, there are other third-party companies that have tried to do that, and if Apple just added that feature, but I brought this thing out because you're talking about talking to the camera. This is a teleprompter thing, and I got a 10-inch LCD screen with an HDMI splitter thing that we're going to use for our workshops, so that my wife can look into and see, instead of looking at her computer screen, she can look into the camera, you know, using the teleprompter screen to talk to people. I can't do that for myself because, like you said, you know, you got to manage the stuff. Plus, it's another big thing that would put my camera up even higher and all that stuff. And you'd see the floor behind me; it's a mess.
It's a tricky balance. Even me, I'm kind of angled down right now because, like, yeah, I just keep raising my computer higher and higher. And then I got to angle these chins out, man. You know, it takes a lot of lighting finesse to get rid of those bad boys.
I did not notice how big my nose was until I was on camera for 20 plus hours a week.
I know. I've never
Longer
spent
than-
as much time looking at myself in my entire goddamn life as I have since March. Like, quite frankly, I'm sick of my face. You know what I mean? So I don't blame you if you're watching this, if you're sick of my face too, honestly. Like, good Lord.
But video is a whole other game. You know, audio is like there's some like best practices, is tried and true, and it's not terribly difficult. Although people still have people just want it easy. They just want, here's good audio and have it. But there's industry standards in video. There's all kinds of stuff, and there's lenses, and then there's different speeds of this,
Just lighting.
frames per second, and lighting, and it's a whole other world of quality that no one speaks that language. No one certainly, like in podcasting, or that is just kind of like the consumer that wants to try it out. Like it ain't. You have to do a lot of research to really spend the money right. You want to make that mistake the wrong way.
And video's expensive, man. Like people that don't want to spend $50 on a microphone, just wait till you start looking at
Yeah,
cameras.
wait
Yeah,
till you hear
don't.
how much this camera costs.
Do you a favor,
Not
don't.
cheap. Yeah.
Terrible. Yeah, well, I guess it's an investment, right? It's an investment in 2021 and
Yep.
success. I mean, if you can spend it, spend it. I actually put together a kit, like a web page on the website that's like recommended equipment, and so it's you know, the microphone bundle that you have, Adam, with like the MB7, the boom arm, and the headphones, which is, you know, genius. And then I put Amazon links to the selfie stick, the camera, and the capture card, but what I forgot to add to that list is the mini or the micro HDMI to HDMI, because it's like Pen's
Lots of
labyrinth to figure out. And I'm pretty tech savvy. It took me months to get the camera to communicate properly. It was like upside down or mirrored or showing the display or cutting off everything. I mean, it wasn't easy to sort all that out. So I just put everything in one place for people. It's like, if you want to spend $1,100 and just level up, if you're like, okay, I want to do it, like everything is on that one page just to like simplify things, you know? And I think I'm going to create a video and send it to all my clients. Like, listen, man, your content's great, but like 2021, let's do it.
Video, yeah, I've actually been getting more consulting work for video than audio, and I'm an audio guy. So
Don't tell your clients that.
That's right.
You're a video guy now.
Well, they just see the results and like, wow, that looks great. Can you help me with mine? You know.
See, and then all you do is take the video from this recording here, put it on YouTube, and there you guys go.
Exactly.
Now you're a video guy as well.
Yeah.
Done. Yeah, shout out to Riverside. Actually, we're super happy. We're using them. I set up a enterprise account with them, sporting another small business, and I'm pretty stoked about it, man. I'm really enjoying this platform. It's really great audio and video quality, man. I'm, and it's not Zoom. So
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate
Very
that.
true.
Did you see they added a meter read on when you're in the waiting room, like in the green room, to get in checking your stuff? Because that was the one thing I was like, I wish I could see my meter to check and make sure it's working. They added, it's not in the actual live window, but when you get ready in, the little microphone thing has a green bar going up now, which is great. Thank you.
I love it. I think more people use them, the more money they have to make more upgrades and stuff. I'm all for it, you know? So awesome. Well, thank you, Bryan. This has been a lot of fun, man. You know, we will definitely love to have you back again. We'll stay in touch and keep the conversations going. I would love to see what kind of stuff you guys do with this like ad creation situation. I think this could be a hella interesting case study with like ads, and I think this is brilliant. It's so meta too. You're like advertising podcast equipment to podcasters on podcasts.
It's the pimp my ride of podcast.
I know. Exhibit's gonna be like, hey man, I heard you like podcasts. So yeah, man. I think it's
brain too on like what it's like running an email list, newsletter thing, because everybody keeps saying that email's dead. It's like, no, it's not.
It's not.
So that's a whole other podcast. Let's talk about emailing,
I will come back anytime. You guys are a blast. I didn't even realize how long we've been talking for.
No, that's why I was like, oh shit, we gotta go, man. We got babies and shit in the building. We got things to do. But we'll definitely hit you up and have you come back. It's been awesome hanging out with you, Bryan. Really appreciate you taking time to spend it with us on a Monday night. And thank you again for tuning in to the Podcast Club. If you found the content valuable, please consider giving it a like, a comment, whatever on YouTube. Share it with your friends. And if any of the gear that we talked about is interesting, you have any questions, all the links are below. But, hit us up. You can hit up Adam anytime, Marcus, like whatever, man. We're here to support you guys. So if you have questions about the stuff we talked about, let us know. And of course, make sure you go subscribe to Bryan Barletta's Sounds Profitable newsletter. We'll make sure the link is below so you can check that out, and definitely get that referral program going. I love the Morning Brew because they're just a great newsletter, and that referral program has done it for them. So get the Sounds Profitable, share it, support the podcast community, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.